The stars stretched endlessly across the dark sky. The Apex command ship floated silently above the burning planet below. Inside, the hum of advanced machinery filled the air, cold and unfeeling. Every crew member moved with precision, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. Today, a human's life hung by the thinnest of threads. Commander Zarek, the Apex general, stood in the center of the control room. His armor glinted under the bright lights, his face hard and unyielding. "He cannot survive," Zarek said, his voice low but filled with authority. The words fell like a hammer on everyone present. The crew nodded in uneasy agreement. Humans were fragile, weak, unpredictable. They were not meant to survive in situations like this. The patient lay in the medbay, barely clinging to life. His body was battered, his vitals weak, and every system that monitored him blinked red with warning. The humans watching him whispered prayers, hoping for a miracle. But the Apex commander had already declared one truth. There was no hope. Then came the human doctor. Dr. Elena Voss moved quietly into the medbay, her eyes calm but focused. She did not carry the weight of doubt. She did not bow to the authority of Zarek. She studied the machines, the patient, the injuries, and then looked up at the crew. "We are not done yet," she said simply. A murmur ran through the medbay. Commander Zarek's gaze fell on her, sharp and disbelieving. "You waste your time, human. He is beyond saving." Elena smiled faintly, but it was not a cheerful smile. It was the smile of someone who had faced the impossible before and survived. "Then I will waste my time," she said, "because time is all we have left." The medbay was silent except for the soft beeping of the life monitors. Every hand hovered near a control panel, every eye fixed on the human doctor. This was no ordinary operation. This was a battle against death itself, and everyone in the room knew it. Elena began her work methodically. She checked every system, recalibrated the life support, and examined the patient with tools far beyond what any human technology could offer. Every now and then, she glanced at Zarek. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. He had seen countless soldiers die, countless missions fail. He knew the odds, and yet he could not look away. Minutes passed, stretched thin like rubber. The patient's vitals dipped dangerously low. A nurse hovered near Elena, hesitant. "Doctor, it's too late." The commander said. Elena shook her head without looking up. "We do not work for the commander. We work for life. And life is not over until the last breath leaves the body." A soft beep sounded, signaling another failure in the patient's system. The crew flinched, but Elena's hands moved faster, steadier, as if she could feel the rhythm of life within him. She adjusted the injector, recalibrated the nanobots circulating in his bloodstream, and whispered to herself, "Hold on. Just hold on." Zarek walked closer, his boots echoing against the metal floor. "Human, why do you waste effort? Every calculation, every prediction says he will die. Even your machines cannot save him now." Elena glanced up, her eyes sharp. "Even your calculations are wrong. You forget one thing about humans. We do not give up. Not so easily." The commander's jaw tightened. There was a faint flicker of curiosity in his eyes. He had seen humans before. They were resilient, stubborn, unpredictable. But even he had never seen one face death with such calm determination. Suddenly, the patient's vitals plunged. The monitors screamed warnings in high-pitched tones. Nurses rushed to stabilize the readings, but Elena stayed calm. She placed her hands on the patient, feeling the pulse that was almost gone. Her voice was soft but firm. "I see you. I know you are still in there. Fight." The medbay seemed to hold its breath. Even the machines quieted for a moment as if listening. Slowly, the patient's heartbeat flickered back to life. Weak but present. A sigh of relief ran through the room, but Elena did not relax. She knew the danger was far from over. Zarek watched in silence, a mixture of disbelief and begrudging respect forming. "How?" he asked quietly. Elena did not answer him. She did not need to. The patient's survival spoke louder than words. She focused on the next steps, adjusting the treatment, monitoring the vitals, and preparing for the real challenges ahead. Outside the medbay, the stars continued to burn coldly. Somewhere out there, dangers awaited. Unseen enemies, unpredictable variables, and the harsh reality of space itself threatened every living thing. But inside, one human doctor refused to surrender. One human defied the Apex Commander's declaration of doom. The crew began to whisper among themselves. Some were inspired. Some were frightened. But all understood the same truth. They were witnessing something extraordinary. They were witnessing the stubborn strength of the human spirit. Hours passed. The patient's condition slowly stabilized. Elena worked tirelessly, never showing fatigue, never losing focus. And though the Apex Commander would never admit it, he was beginning to realize something he had not expected. Humans were not just fragile beings. They were fighters, survivors. They were capable of miracles, even against impossible odds. Finally, as the first signs of dawn glimmered outside the ship's massive windows, Elena stepped back. The patient's vitals were no longer critical, though he was still weak. She allowed herself a small nod, a silent promise that she would not stop until he was fully safe. Zarek turned away, his face shadowed, his pride wounded, but his curiosity piqued. He had declared the mission impossible. He had predicted death. Yet here was a human, alive, against all odds. Elena knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was filled with dangers far greater than this. But she also knew that humans had something no machine, no alien, no calculation could predict. Hope, determination, the will to fight, no matter the odds. And as the ship sailed through the endless void of space, one thing was certain: the impossible mission had begun. And no one, not even the Apex Commander, would be able to predict how it would end. The medbay was quiet now, but the silence was tense, like the calm before a storm. The patient lay in the center of the room, still weak, still fragile. His chest rose and fell slowly, each breath a victory. Dr. Elena Voss did not relax. She knew this was only the beginning. The battle for survival had just started. Commander Zarek paced outside the medbay door. His massive frame blocked the light from the hallway, casting long shadows across the floor. He had expected humans to fail. They were weak, fragile, and unpredictable. Yet here was one, holding life in her hands, defying the laws of nature as if it were nothing. He did not understand it, and perhaps that was why it unsettled him. Inside the medbay, Elena worked tirelessly. She adjusted the machinery, monitored the patient's vitals, and cleaned wounds that seemed impossible to heal. Every move was deliberate, careful, and precise. She spoke softly to the patient, though he could not respond. "Stay with me," she whispered. "I will not let you go. Not yet. Not ever." The crew watched in awe. Humans rarely dared to stand against the Apex Commander's decisions. Most would have obeyed, turning away when death came. But Elena was different. She did not need permission. She did not wait for orders. She acted because it was the right thing to do, because life mattered. A sudden alarm broke the silence. The patient's vitals spiked, then dropped dangerously low. The monitors flashed red. The medbay team froze, fear and panic flashing in their eyes. "It's too soon," a nurse whispered. Elena's hands moved faster. Her eyes never left the patient. "It's never too soon," she said calmly. "It's never too late." She tapped on the console, redirecting energy to the life support systems, rerouting nanobots into the bloodstream, and adjusting every parameter that could make a difference. Every move was bold, calculated, and risky. But she had no other choice. The patient gasped, a sound so weak it was almost swallowed by the machines. But it was enough to remind everyone in the room that he was still alive. Outside, Zarek's patience snapped. He strode into the medbay, his heavy boots echoing against the metal floor. "Doctor," he barked, "you risk everything on hope and human stubbornness. He is dying. He will die. Step aside." Elena did not look up immediately. She did not flinch. "Step aside?" she repeated softly, almost to herself. Then, with quiet authority, she said, "No, I will not step aside. Not now, not ever." Zarek's eyes narrowed. He had seen human stubbornness before, But this was something else. Something different. It was not arrogance. It was not defiance. It was determination, pure and unshakable. For the first time, he felt uncertainty. The patient's condition worsened again. The life monitors screamed, their warning lights flashing red across the room. The crew panicked, but Elena stayed calm. She had seen death many times, faced situations where every calculation said survival was impossible. And yet, here she was, finding solutions where none existed. She reached for a small device on the table. It was human-made, fragile-looking, almost primitive compared to the advanced technology of the Apex ship. Yet it contained a process no machine or alien knowledge could replicate. A human method, a human touch. She activated it, and the device hummed softly, sending tiny pulses into the patient's body. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the vitals began to stabilize. The patient's heartbeat, weak but steady. The breathing became more regular. A tiny spark of hope flickered in the medbay. Zarek watched in disbelief. "How?" he muttered under his breath. Elena did not answer. She focused on her work, adjusting the device, monitoring every vital sign. "Humans are like fire," she said softly. "Even when crushed, we find a way to burn again. Even in darkness, we find light." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They had heard stories of human resilience, but they had never seen it so clearly. One human, against impossible odds, was saving a life that everyone else had written off. But Elena knew this was only the start. The patient's injuries were severe, his body fragile. One wrong move, one system failure, and everything could collapse. She had to act faster, think sharper, and trust instincts that no machine could calculate. Minutes turned into hours. Every second felt like a lifetime. Zarek remained in the room, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. He watched the human doctor work, silently taking in every move. He did not admit it, but a part of him respected her. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous, but effective. They were capable of things no other species could achieve. Suddenly, another alarm rang. This time, it was not the patient. It was the ship. Sensors detected an approaching anomaly, a field of energy that could interfere with the life support systems at any moment. The medbay team froze. Panic rose like a wave. "We must move him," one officer shouted. Elena shook her head. "No, moving him now could kill him. We adapt, we adjust, we survive." Her eyes scanned the console. She recalibrated the systems to shield against the interference, rerouted power, and held her hands over the patient's chest, feeling every pulse, every fluctuation. The anomaly approached, a bright, dangerous field of energy. The ship's shields flickered, warning lights flashing. And yet, inside the medbay, the patient remained stable. Elena's calm focus held the line against chaos. Zarek stepped closer, his skepticism mixed with awe. "Human, you are." "Different," he admitted quietly. Elena glanced at him, her eyes steady. "No, Commander. I am human. That is all." The patient's vitals continued to stabilize. The immediate danger was not gone, but hope had returned. For the first time, the medbay crew believed that survival was possible. The human doctor had stepped up, not with strength of arms, but with determination, intelligence, and courage. Outside, the stars continued to burn cold and distant. But inside, a human spirit blazed brighter than any light in the galaxy. Elena knew this was only the beginning. The challenges ahead would be greater, the dangers deadlier. Yet she also knew one undeniable truth. Humans did not give up. And as the Apex commander watched, silently acknowledging what he could not yet admit, the impossible mission continued. And now, it had a fighting chance. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the medbay. The anomaly outside was not just approaching, it was attacking. Energy pulses tore through the ship's outer shields, rattling the metal walls. Every creak and groan of the vessel made the crew jump. Panic rose like a tide, threatening to drown them all. Dr. Elena Voss kept her hands on the patient, her eyes focused, her mind calculating every possibility. "Stay calm," she whispered more to herself than to anyone else. "We adapt. We survive. Commander Zarek stormed into the medbay, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. This is your doing, human. You risked everything, and now the ship is under threat. Step aside before more lives are lost. Elena did not flinch. She met his glare with calm resolve. I will not step aside, she said. The patient comes first. We adapt or he dies. That is the choice we face. The anomaly's energy pulses grew stronger. Systems began to fail one by one. Lights flickered, oxygen regulators sputtered, and the life support monitors for the patient beeped erratically. The crew scrambled, trying to stabilize the systems. But nothing seemed to work. Then it happened. The patient convulsed violently, his body shaking under the strain. The monitors screamed red warnings. Elena rushed to his side, adjusting the nanobot injectors, recalibrating the life support parameters. She poured all her focus into stabilizing him, but this time her efforts failed. The patient's heart monitor flatlined. A sickening silence fell over the medbay. The crew froze. The alarms screamed louder, warning of systems failing, life slipping away. Elena's hands shook slightly as she checked the readings. No matter what she did, the monitors refused to respond. Commander Zarek's voice cut through the tension, sharp and cutting. I told you, human, he is gone. Nothing you do can save him now. Elena's chest heaved, but she did not let despair take her. She stared at the patient, at the machines, at the flashing lights, and whispered, Not yet. Not like this, but the truth was undeniable. Her first attempt had failed. She had been too slow, too cautious, too human. The patient's body had rejected the treatment. The anomaly's interference had been stronger than expected, and, for the first time, she felt the weight of failure pressing down on her. The crew stepped back, some covering their mouths in horror, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The Apex commander looked on, a rare flicker of satisfaction mixed with cold calculation. See, he said, even humans fail when faced with the impossible. Elena closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. She had failed, but she refused to surrender. She had seen death before. She had seen humans die under the weight of impossible odds. And yet she had also seen them rise again. She opened her eyes, sharp and determined. This was not the end, she said firmly. We learn, we adapt. We try again, Zarek's eyebrows raised. He did not understand it. Humans did not give up, even when failure stared them in the face. He had seen countless soldiers fall, countless missions collapse, and yet here was one human, staring failure straight in the eye and refusing to be defeated. Elena quickly analyzed the patient's vitals and the systems affected by the anomaly. She realized that the interference had disrupted the nanobot's circulation, causing the body to reject treatment. The solution was risky, dangerous, and required precision no one else could manage. But Elena had no other choice. Prepare the stabilizers, she commanded. We are going in again. This time, we do it differently. Every calculation, every parameter must be perfect. I will not fail twice. The crew moved quickly under her orders, adjusting machines, rerouting energy, and preparing the patient for a second attempt. The medbay was tense, every second stretching into eternity. Outside, the anomaly continued to pulse, its energy threatening to tear through the ship. Zarek watched silently. He did not intervene. He wanted to see what the human would do next. Humans were unpredictable, sometimes foolish, sometimes brilliant. Elena was showing signs of the latter. Elena placed her hands on the patient again. She whispered softly, feeling the pulse that had nearly died. You are stronger than you think, she murmured. We fight. Together. She recalibrated the nanobot injectors, adjusted the energy flow, and carefully monitored every fluctuation in the patient's vitals. Seconds felt like minutes. Every beep, every flicker of light, every tremor in the ship made her heart race. But she stayed focused. Failure had taught her something invaluable. She could not rely on calculations alone. She had to listen, to feel, to anticipate. Humans survived not just with machines or tools, but with instinct, intuition, and willpower. The patient's body trembled again, but this time Elena anticipated the reaction. She adjusted the energy flow, stabilized the vitals, and slowly, carefully, the monitors began to respond. The heart monitor flickered, weak but present. The breathing became more regular. A collective breath seemed to escape the medbay. The crew watched, eyes wide, hearts pounding. The first failure had almost destroyed them all, but the second attempt was working. Slowly, steadily, the patient returned to life. Elena did not celebrate. She did not smile. She remained focused, adjusting and monitoring, making sure the fragile thread of life held. Outside, the anomaly continued to pulse, but inside, one human had proven something extraordinary. Zarek's expression softened slightly, though he would never admit it. He had predicted failure. He had expected death. And yet, here was a human, not only surviving but fighting back against impossible odds. Elena stepped back, her hands finally free, though her eyes never left the patient. She knew this was only the beginning. The anomaly was still out there. The patient was still weak, and the galaxy would not become any less dangerous. But she also knew one undeniable truth. Humans did not give up after the first failure. Humans fought. Humans adapted. Humans survived. And she would continue to fight no matter the cost. As the medbay lights dimmed and the ship stabilized, one thing was clear. The first failure had taught them all a lesson. Survival was never guaranteed, but determination could turn even the impossible into hope. The impossible mission had hit its first wall, and humans had begun to climb it. The medbay had quieted, but the calm was fragile, like ice over deep water. The patient lay on the table, breathing steadily for now, yet every officer in the room knew this was only temporary. The anomaly outside had retreated for the moment, but its presence lingered like a shadow over the ship. Dr. Elena Voss did not relax. Her mind raced, analyzing every monitor, every system, every signal coming from the patient. Something was wrong. Something she had not seen before. "Doctor," a young nurse whispered, pointing to a screen filled with unreadable data. "Look at this. The vitals. They're stable, but there's interference in the nanobot response. I've never seen anything like it." Elena's brow furrowed. She leaned over the console, scanning the patterns carefully. Her sharp eyes caught subtle fluctuations, tiny anomalies that most humans would never notice. But she did. She always did. "There's something in his system," Elena said quietly. "Something foreign. Something that shouldn't be there." Zarek's eyes narrowed. "Foreign? Explain." "It's a hidden interference," Elena explained, pointing at the screen. "The patient's body is rejecting the nanobot treatment, but not because of natural failure. Something external is affecting it. Maybe alien tech, maybe some kind of biological agent. Either way, it's strong enough to fool our systems." The medbay fell silent. Even the crew, already impressed by Elena's determination, were stunned. A hidden threat inside the patient that was unusual, dangerous, deadly. Elena placed her hands on the patient's chest. She could feel the subtle fluctuations, the hidden pulse of energy that did not belong. "We need to isolate it," she said. "We need to see what we're dealing with before it kills him." Zarek's massive frame loomed behind her. "And if you fail, this anomaly already threatens the ship. You risk everything trying to find the unknown." Elena did not flinch. "Then I will risk everything," she said firmly, "because doing nothing guarantees his death, and I do not accept that outcome." She activated a small scanner, a human-made device she had developed for situations like this. It was fragile, primitive compared to Apex technology, yet it could detect patterns the advanced systems could not. Tiny beams of light scanned the patient's body, tracing every pulse, every fluctuation. Suddenly, the scanner beeped sharply. Elena's eyes widened. "Found it," she whispered. "It's embedded deep within the nervous system. Not natural, not human. Something is controlling the interference from inside." The medbay crew gasped. One officer stepped back, shaking. "Controlling? From inside him? How's that even possible?" Elena shook her head. "I don't know yet. But if we don't remove or neutralize it, he will die." And not just from his injuries. This, whatever it is, will finish him off. Zarek's expression darkened. He had expected death. He had expected humans to fail. But this was different, a hidden threat inside a human on top of the injuries. The impossible had just become more impossible. Elena worked quickly, carefully, her hands moving with precision. The scanner traced the interference's origin. She identified a cluster deep inside the patient's spinal cord, an unknown technology fused with his biology. Alien nanites? Advanced hacking of the human nervous system? She could not tell yet. "Doctor," the nurse said nervously, "if we try to remove it now, we could kill him instantly." "I know," Elena replied, "but if we don't, he will die anyway. We have no choice." She called for the team to prepare for a delicate procedure. Every second mattered. The hidden threat was subtle, but it was growing stronger, feeding off the patient's life force. She could feel its pulse in the tiny flickers of energy on the monitors. Zarek spoke quietly, almost to himself. Humans. Foolish, brave, unpredictable. His eyes flicked to Elena. "You think you can succeed where machines fail?" Elena glanced at him, her expression calm but unyielding. "I do not rely on machines alone. I rely on humans. And humans never give up." The team moved in unison, following Elena's precise instructions. She guided robotic arms, adjusted energy fields, and carefully monitored every vital sign. The patient trembled under the procedure, pain flashing across his face, but Elena whispered to him softly, firmly, "You are stronger than this. You will survive. I will not let you die here." Minutes dragged into hours. Every flicker of the monitor, every pulse of energy sent adrenaline through the medbay. The interference resisted every attempt to isolate it. It was intelligent, adaptive, almost alive. Suddenly, the hidden threat reacted violently. The patient convulsed, and the life support alarms went wild. Elena's hands moved faster, adjusting, rerouting, improvising. The crew held their breath. If she failed, the human would die. And they all knew it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the interference was partially isolated. The pulse weakened. The patient's vitals stabilized. Elena allowed herself a brief moment of relief, but she did not celebrate. The threat was not gone. It was only contained. For now. Zarek, standing silently in the corner, finally spoke. His voice was low, almost grudging. "Impressive, human. I did not expect this level of skill." Elena glanced at him, her eyes sharp. "It's not skill. It's determination. You underestimate humans too often, Commander." The medbay team exhaled collectively, tension slowly easing. But everyone knew the danger had not passed. The hidden threat was still alive, still dangerous, and the anomaly outside the ship had not gone away. Elena turned back to the patient, her hands hovering over him. "Rest for now," she whispered. "We fight again soon, but you are still alive, and as long as that is true, there is hope." Outside, the stars burned coldly, distant and uncaring. But inside the medbay, a human spirit blazed brighter than any light in the galaxy. Elena had discovered the hidden threat, and she had survived. For now, but deep down she knew this was only the beginning. The universe was full of dangers humans could not predict, threats stronger than they could imagine. And yet, she would face them all, because humans never gave up. The impossible mission had just revealed its next challenge, and the human doctor was ready. The ship shuddered again, stronger this time. Outside, the anomaly pulsed violently, waves of energy crashing against the shields. The hull groaned under the pressure, warning lights blinking everywhere. Time was slipping away, faster than anyone could measure. Dr. Elena Voss stood over the patient, her hands steady but her mind racing. The hidden threat inside him was weakening, but not gone. Each second that passed without action increased the risk. If the anomaly breached the ship's defenses, the patient would die, and with him, the human effort that had defied every expectation. "Doctor!" a medic shouted. "The energy spikes are destabilizing the medbay systems. We can't keep the life support stable much longer." Elena's eyes darted across the monitors. She understood immediately. They had mere minutes to complete the procedure and isolate the threat fully before the anomaly overloaded the ship's systems. Every calculation she had made, every instinct, told her this was a fight against time itself. Zarek stood behind her, arms crossed, his face unreadable. "If you fail now," he said, his voice low, "it won't just be the human who dies. This entire ship could be lost." Elena did not flinch. She adjusted the scanners, rerouted energy flows, and activated emergency stabilizers. "I am aware, Commander," she said. "But standing by will not help anyone. We act now, or we lose everything." The medbay team moved like one organism following Elena's precise commands. Robotic arms adjusted nanobot injections. Energy shields hummed to life around the patient, and every system focused on keeping the fragile human alive. The tension in the room was palpable. Every beep and flicker of the monitors was a heartbeat of hope or warning of failure. Suddenly, the patient's body convulsed violently. The hidden threat resisted, pulsing like a living thing, fighting back against Elena's efforts. The monitors went wild, alarms screaming. The crew froze in terror. Elena's hands moved faster, guided by instinct. She had seen this before, in simulations, in past emergencies, and in countless human struggles. She did not hesitate. She redirected the nanobot flow, increased energy pulses to the interference field, and whispered to the patient, "Hold on. Fight with me." Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The anomaly outside hammered at the shields, threatening to break through. Lights flickered, the ship's floor vibrated, and crew members gritted their teeth in fear. Yet inside the medbay, Elena remained calm, focused, unshakable. The patient gasped, a weak sound, almost drowned by the alarms. But it was enough to show life still lingered. Elena adjusted the energy flow, guiding the hidden threat into isolation. The pulse inside the patient slowed, weakening under her careful management. Zarek watched silently. He had expected failure, expected chaos, expected humans to crumble under pressure. Yet here was Elena, standing firm against the impossible, racing against time, bending every system and instinct to her will. He could not deny it. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but astonishingly resilient. The hidden threat pulsed one last time, a final attempt to resist. The patient's body trembled violently. Elena held her hands over him, whispering softly, "You will survive. You must survive." With a calculated motion, she activated the final phase of her procedure. The energy flowed precisely, guided by human intuition and determination. The interference weakened, flickering like a dying star. The patient's body grew still, calm, stable. The monitors shifted from red to green. The life support system stabilized. The medbay team exhaled collectively, relief washing over them like a wave. The immediate danger had passed. For now, Zarek stepped forward, his massive frame towering over the room. He did not speak at first. Then quietly he said, "Remarkable. Human. You risked everything. And you succeeded." Elena did not smile. Her eyes remained on the patient. "Success is temporary," she said firmly. "Danger still exists. We cannot rest." Outside, the anomaly still pulsed, still threatened, but the ship held. Inside, a human had pushed back against death itself, against impossible odds, against forces no one else could confront. She had turned near-certain failure into survival. The medbay crew looked at Elena with awe. Some whispered prayers, others shook their heads in disbelief. One thing was clear. They had witnessed a human spirit that refused to bow to death, to technology, or to authority. The patient's breathing was steady now. Elena placed her hand gently on his chest. "You are stronger than you realize," she said softly, "and you will need that strength for what comes next." Zarek remained silent for a long moment. He had always believed humans were weak, unpredictable, and fragile. But here, in the medbay of his ship, he saw something different. Determination, courage, intelligence, the ability to survive against all odds. The human doctor had proven that survival was not just about technology, calculations, or power. It was about spirit, will. And when a human refused to give up, even the impossible could become possible. Yet Elena knew the anomaly was not gone. The hidden threat was contained but far from neutralized. The universe was filled with dangers humans could not predict, threats that could strike at any moment. But she also knew one truth. As long as humans fought, as long as they refused to surrender, there was always hope. Time was running out again, but Elena's focus never wavered. The race against time had been won for now, but the mission was far from over. The galaxy would test them again, in ways they could not imagine, and Dr. Elena Voss would be ready. The medbay was quiet now, though the tension still hung in the air like a storm cloud. The anomaly outside had retreated for the moment, but its presence was not gone. Energy pulses still echoed faintly through the ship, reminding everyone that danger was never far. Dr. Elena Voss leaned over the patient, monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. For the first time since the mission began, there were signs of recovery. The hidden threat was weakening, its control over the patient diminishing with every careful adjustment she made. "His vitals are stabilizing," a medic whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "I think he's going to make it." Elena nodded, though her face remained serious. "Stabilizing is not the same as safe," she said. "We are not done yet. The danger isn't gone. We need to keep monitoring, keep adjusting." Commander Zarek stood silently behind her, watching. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. But inside, a part of him had changed. He had expected humans to fail, expected chaos, expected death. Yet here was one human, working tirelessly, facing danger that even the Apex technology could barely handle, and succeeding. He finally spoke, his voice low. "Human, your persistence is remarkable." Elena did not look up. "Persistence keeps humans alive," she said simply. "It keeps us fighting, even when everything says we cannot." The medbay crew worked quietly, following Elena's commands. Every adjustment, every pulse of energy, every tiny movement mattered. The patient's body trembled slightly, a sign of weakness but also of life. He was fighting, too, though unconsciously his body clinging to the smallest chance of survival. Suddenly, the anomaly's energy spikes returned, weaker than before but still threatening. The ship shook, alarms warning of potential breaches. Elena's eyes narrowed. She adjusted the shielding around the medbay, rerouting power to keep the life support stable. Time was slipping again, but this time she had control. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, carefully, the patient's vitals strengthened. The hidden threat's energy pulses faded further, no longer able to resist the careful guidance of the human doctor. Every beep of the monitors now sounded less urgent, more like a heartbeat of hope. Zarek took a step closer, watching Elena work. "Humans, stubborn, foolish, unpredictable, but they survive," he murmured. "I did not believe it possible. But perhaps I underestimated you." Elena glanced at him briefly. "It is not belief that matters, Commander," she said. "It is action. We do not wait for miracles. We create them." The patient's body shifted slightly, weakly opening his eyes. His gaze was unfocused but alive. A faint sigh escaped his lips. Elena smiled faintly, though it was not a celebration. It was recognition. Recognition that life had fought back, and the human doctor had guided it. The crew around her let out soft sighs of relief. Whispers of hope spread through the room. For the first time, the impossible mission felt achievable. Humans were not just fragile creatures. They were fighters, survivors, capable of achieving what no one else could. Yet Elena knew the mission was far from over. The hidden threat was contained, but it still existed, lying dormant within the patient. The anomaly outside could return at any moment, stronger than before. Danger was never truly gone in space. She turned her attention back to the patient, carefully examining his vitals. "We have a chance," she whispered. "A real chance. But we cannot be careless. Not for a second." Zarek stepped closer, his massive shadow falling across the room. "Human, Your actions today have changed my perspective. I have always seen your species as weak, disposable. But now, I see strength where I did not expect it." Elena met his gaze. "We survive because we refuse to give up. That is our strength. You cannot calculate it. You cannot predict it. But you will see it in action." The anomaly outside pulsed again, faintly as if sensing the shift in the ship's energy. Elena adjusted the shielding once more, keeping the life support stable. The hidden threat inside the patient remained contained, but the race against time was not over. Still, for the first time, there was hope. The patient was alive. The human doctor had held the line, and Zarek, the Apex commander, had begun to understand something fundamental about humans. They were fragile, yes. Unpredictable, yes. But when faced with the impossible, they fought. They adapted. They survived, and that was the turning point. Elena took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment of quiet reflection. She knew the next challenges would be even harder, even more dangerous. But she also knew that humans, with their determination and willpower, could face them and survive. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, indifferent to the struggles of life below. But inside the medbay, a human spirit burned brighter than any star in the galaxy. The patient's eyes focused for the first time, recognizing the woman who had refused to give up on him. Elena smiled softly. "You are not alone," she whispered, "and we will survive. Together." Zarek turned away, his expression unreadable, but a small flicker of respect shone in his eyes. The impossible mission had shifted. The human doctor had turned the tide, proving that even against overwhelming odds, survival was possible. And as the ship sailed through the endless void of space, one truth became clear. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their spirit, their determination, and their refusal to give up could change the course of fate itself. The turning point had arrived, and with it, a new hope for the impossible mission. The medbay was filled with a quiet hum, the tension that had gripped the room for days now easing, though not completely gone. The patient lay on the table, breathing steadily. The hidden threat inside him had been fully neutralized, no longer resisting, no longer threatening life. For the first time since the mission began, there was relief, and a fragile sense of victory. Dr. Elena Voss leaned over the patient, her hands steady as she checked the final readings. The monitors glowed green, stable, and strong. She allowed herself a small smile, though it was calm, measured. This was no celebration. There was work to do, but it was a recognition of triumph over the impossible. The medbay crew whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others smiling quietly. They had witnessed what seemed unimaginable. A human fighting against forces that could have killed any other being, and winning. Commander Zarek stood silently behind Elena, his massive frame a shadow over the medbay. He had come expecting failure, expecting chaos, expecting human weakness. Yet here he was, seeing firsthand what he could not have predicted. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were also resilient, stubborn, and capable of miracles when driven by determination. Zarek spoke, his voice low but carrying weight. "Human, I underestimated your species. Today, you have proven strength I did not think possible." Elena glanced at him, her expression calm but firm. "Strength comes not from power, Commander. It comes from persistence, courage, and the will to fight when everything says you cannot." The patient stirred, weakly opening his eyes. His gaze fell on Elena, recognition flickering in his expression. Though he was still fragile, he understood that he had been given life when no one else thought it possible. "You saved me," he whispered, voice hoarse but filled with wonder. Elena nodded, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We saved you," she said softly. "Not just me. Humans survive because we fight together, because we refuse to give up." Zarek watched silently, absorbing the words. For the first time, he admitted to himself that humans were not simply weak beings to be controlled or dismissed. They were unpredictable, yes, but in their unpredictability was power. In their persistence was strength no calculation or alien logic could predict. Outside the ship, the anomaly had disappeared for now. The immediate danger was gone, though the universe would always hold more threats, more challenges. But within the medbay, humanity had triumphed. Elena turned back to the patient, checking every vital sign one last time. "You are safe for now," she whispered. "But you must stay strong. Recovery will be slow, and there are still dangers ahead. But we will face them, together." The medbay crew allowed themselves a sigh of relief. They had survived. Against the odds, against impossible challenges, a human had prevailed. They understood now that humans were capable of far more than they had ever imagined. Zarek finally stepped forward, fully meeting Elena's eyes. "You have changed my perspective, Doctor. Humans are not merely fragile. You have shown me resilience, intelligence, and determination beyond my comprehension. I will not forget this lesson." Elena nodded. "I hope this lesson will guide your decisions, Commander. Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes, but we fight. We survive. And sometimes, against impossible odds, we succeed." The patient coughed lightly, regaining strength. He looked around the medbay, taking in the team that had saved him, the machines that had supported him, and the human doctor who had refused to give up. "Thank you," he whispered again, this time with more confidence. Elena smiled softly. "Do not thank me alone. Thank the human spirit. Thank determination. Thank hope. That is what saved you." Zarek's eyes flicked to the patient, then back to Elena. "Humans, perhaps I misjudged you all. There is strength here, a spark that no calculation can destroy. I will remember this day." Elena turned her attention back to the patient, her calm focus returning. The mission was far from over. Space would always hold new dangers, new anomalies, new threats. But they had faced one impossible challenge and triumphed. That was enough to fuel hope for the battles ahead. Outside, the stars continued their silent vigil, indifferent to the struggles of life below. Yet within the medbay, something extraordinary had occurred. A human had stood against overwhelming odds, faced death and interference that no machine could predict, and emerged victorious. The patient's breathing grew steadier, stronger. Elena placed a hand on his chest, feeling the rhythm of life she had fought so hard to protect. "Rest now," she whispered. "The fight is not over, but you are alive. And that is everything." Zarek turned to leave the medbay, his massive shadow fading into the hall. He did not fully understand humans, nor could he predict their actions. But he had learned a truth he would carry. Underestimate humans, and you risk being surprised by the impossible. Elena watched him go, then looked at the patient one last time. She knew this was not the end. The universe was vast and threats were everywhere. But she also knew that humans, with their stubbornness, courage, and determination, could survive anything the stars sent their way. A quiet moment settled over the medbay. The patient slept, safe for now. The team relaxed, exhausted but alive. And Elena stood, calm and unwavering, a symbol of human resilience in a galaxy that often underestimated them. Triumph had been achieved, reflection had been made, and hope burned brighter than ever. The impossible mission had succeeded, proving that humans could face death, defeat the odds, and emerge victorious. The stars outside would continue to shine, distant and indifferent. But inside the medbay, life had been saved by one human who refused to give up, and, in doing so, had reminded everyone that sometimes, against all odds, the impossible was possible, and so the mission ended not with defeat, but with triumph, hope, and a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. Humans survive. Humans fight. Humans endure.